welcome back to Cindy's Library. This is Cindy, and exciting times coming up. Family reunion next week, so I have some hope of being able to do a video next week, but we will see. But I have a bit of time today, and the first half of July is over, so we've got some books to talk about. So let's see. First, I read Spring Magic by D.E. Stevenson. This is a World War II story. This is a girl who has been rather sheltered and put upon by her aunt and uncle, especially her aunt, who she went to live with after her parents died. And after her aunt is finally convinced of the danger of the Blitz, she sees her chance for a vacation finally, and she goes to Scotland and meets interesting people there, and things go on from there. Very much enjoyed this one. And I read Dear Hugo by Molly Clavering. So this is the story of Sarah Monteith. She was the fiance of Hugo's brother, Ivo, but sadly he died in World War II, and so 10 years later, Sarah decides to move to the town where both Ivo and Hugo grew up, and she has a correspondence going on with Hugo about all of this. And it has a bit of an unusual ending, but I appreciated it personally and greatly enjoyed it. Let's see, I also read Days at the Morisaki Bookshop. So Takako, she's 20 years old and her life falls apart when her boyfriend of 2 years, anyway, she finds out that all along, even before they started dating, he's been dating this other gal who he's now announced he is engaged to. And this affects her work life. She can't keep up. She's depressed. And so after several months of this, her mother arranges for her uncle to have her live above his bookshop, the Morisaki Bookshop. And we need to pause, it looks like. Sorry about that, but I'm back now. Anyway, so the idea is for Takako to live in the top part of her uncle's bookshop, second or maybe even third story. And there's a space where she can live in exchange for helping out, basically taking over the shop in the mornings, giving Uncle a bit more time, not worrying about customers. And so she does this. The idea is to get back on her feet, and we get lots about bookshops and reading and how they can affect you in positive ways. And that is basically the first half. Then the second half, something happens that changes everything. So, Days at the Morisaki Bookshop. And I also read Mastering the Art of French Murder by Choleen, Cambridge. That was for a book group. So Choleen So, Mastering the Art of French Murder, that is a riff off of Julia Child's Mastering the Art of French Cooking, which is very popular in the 60s and 70s, I believe. And so that part apparently is true. Julia Child, she was the wife of an American diplomat of some sort. They got assigned to Paris, all very well, except for the fact that she was bored while her husband was at work. So she ended up taking French cooking classes, and the rest they say is history. Sorry about that, trying to get this done while also the family's getting ready for the reunion. But, so that part of the story that this is based on is true. But the actual story, I forget her name. It's about an American young lady. She literally was a Rosie the Riveter during World War II, but of course, after World War II, that ended, and she's been uh, a bit at loose ends, especially since the guy she was engaged with during the war came back and said he wants to get married to someone else. So, her family suggests, and she decides to go to Paris and live with her grandparent and uncle for a while, and she does. And Julia Child happens to live relatively near, so as expats in Paris, they become friends. And there are two mysteries in the story. The first is Julia Child. She has successfully made homemade mayonnaise before, which is great. But whatever she is doing now, she cannot get it to come out right. And so there's a mystery about the mayonnaise. There's also a more serious mystery that happens as well. Uh, our heroine, uh, Julia's sister, she's with an acting troupe, American Stage in Paris, and of course, she likes to invite the theater people over to Julia's house. And so that happens one day. Our heroine gets invited too. She leaves with a young lady. Next day, it is discovered the young lady has been murdered. And the body is basically found at Julia Child's apartment complex. And so things go on from there. So, interesting time. This is after World War II, 5 or 10 years. In any case, it is a very interesting time. Get some Cold War echoes, and of course, Paris is the perfect location for just about any story that doesn't need to be location specific. Perfect atmosphere. Julia Child is an interesting addition. Definitely a cozy. So if that is what you are interested in, this might be a good one to check out. So I did all of that. Now you may be thinking, what about Jane Austen July? Fear not. I've been working on Jane Austen July. I read Wordsworth and Coleridge's Lyrical Ballads from 1798. Did not do the 1802 one, but I did do the 1798. There's some amazing stuff in here, and it is very interesting because aside from anything poetically, there's definitely subjects in here that I'm pretty sure were not traditional at the time. Not epic, not the elite, more everyday people. I quite enjoyed it. And I got 10 more letters through Jane Austen's letters. And that's probably as good as it's going to get this year. But 10 more letters. And it's an interesting set because this is the time when Mansfield Park was finished and Jane Austen was working on rewrites or editing or anything like that, preparing for final publication, and then it's actually published. And we get a few reactions from family members and neighbors and things like that. So very interesting. Anyway, that is what I have managed to read for the first half of the month. We'll have to see how the second half goes. Lots of family stuff, but that's okay. It'll be good. Hope your July reading so far has been just as good. Thank you so much for stopping by. I truly do appreciate it. So until next time, until we meet again, I hope we all stay safe and healthy. And as always, happy reading.